There's probably a good chance you've never even heard of this world-famous artist. So get comfortable, relax, and come along with me as we learn all about Wanda Gág. Wanda Gág wrote one of the most famous children's books ever written. As a matter of fact, the book she wrote and illustrated is the only American children's book that has been in continuous publication since its first printing in 1928. Can you name the book? I won't hold you in suspense. It's a book called Millions of Cats. But this isn't just a story about a successful writer and illustrator. The real story of Wanda Gág is even more compelling and fascinating than the story of her best-selling book. The real story of Wanda Gág is filled with hardships, intrigue, mystery, rebellion, love, and loss. It's a story of a woman who defied convention and dared to live the life she dreamed of. She was born in a small town in Minnesota in the spring of 1893. Her father, Anton Gág, was a painter, musician, and photographer, and her mother, Elizabeth, came from a creative family and was also a photographer. Together they had 7 children, Wanda being the oldest. Both of Wanda's parents were of Bohemian descent. Anton and his wife Elizabeth, also known as Lissy, encouraged all of their children to read, to draw, to make music. The family was close, and Wanda grew up believing that every child must have an innate ability to draw. Those early years were happy times for the family. Anton made enough money from his art and photography to build a home in New Ulm. It was a quirky house that reflected the Gág's bohemian influences. Built in the Queen Anne style, I'll take you along to see the house later in the video. Unfortunately, the happiness in the house wouldn't last, as Anton Gág fell ill and eventually died from tuberculosis in 1908, at the age of 49. Wanda was just 15 years old when her father died, and with her mother exhausted and sickly from caring for her husband, it was left to Wanda as the oldest to take care of the family. It was around this time that Wanda began to keep a diary. She wrote about those years of hunger and deprivation. There are many entries in her diary that talk about struggling to stretch food so that everyone in the house had enough to eat, and her efforts to work and sell her art just to pay for food and household expenses became her focus. Through those years, they somehow managed to stretch a small insurance payment, along with $8 a month in county assistance, to make ends meet. Although there was great pressure on her to quit school and find work, she resisted and managed to continue her schooling while picking up work on the side. She also made sure her siblings were going to school and keeping their responsibilities. After high school, Wanda took up a teaching job, but continued to submit her work to local magazines and newspapers. She won contests and made money from small pieces submitted to the magazines and newspapers, and she was eventually offered a scholarship to attend the St. Paul School of Art. However, even with the generous scholarship, she just could not afford room and board. By this time, though, she had already been noticed by prominent locals and a businessman named Charles Weschke. Mr. Weschke paid a visit to Wanda and her family in 1912. He offered to pay for Wanda's room and board and told her it was his obligation to see her be a success and for the world to know her art. This good fortune would allow Wanda the freedom to explore her talents at art school. Wanda seemed to enjoy the art school in St. Paul, but often found it limiting and confining to follow the old processes. She attended the school for a few terms and worked at an internship. During this time, another patron named Herschel V. Jones, publisher of the Minneapolis Journal, took notice of Wanda's work and offered to pay for her to attend the Minneapolis School of Art, where she would attend for a couple of years. During her time at art school, she met new friends who opened up her eyes to a wider world. She wrote in her diary, "I don't know just how this sounds written down, but ding, a man can talk to almost anyone with impunity, and just because we are women, we can't, however much we are interested in human nature." It was during this time she met Adolf Den, who became a lithographer of significant note, and they had a long relationship. The two also had a brief romance. In 1917, Gág and Den both won full scholarships to the renowned Art Students League in New York. And in that same year, her mother Lizzie died. and the Gág siblings were all alone without any parents. By this time, Wanda was 24 years old, and several of her younger sisters were able to find work teaching, and they were able to lift some of the burden from Wanda of providing for the younger family members. Her classmates at the art school wanted to help Wanda as she set off for the Big Apple. She wrote, "The alumni of the Minneapolis Art School took up a collection for me, $50, to be used in my New York struggles. I almost bawled over that." Wanda Gág, 1917. She must have thought New York was the biggest city in the world, but I don't think it overwhelmed young Wanda. Instead, she seemed for a time to embrace its vibrancy and frenetic pace. While Wanda was in New York, she began to sell fine art prints and illustrations for books and advertisements. Like her sense of the spiritual in nature, Gág's politics and ideology was embedded in her form of the art itself. Ahead of her time in many ways, Gág was an early feminist, a member of a progressive group of Greenwich Village artists in the 20s and 30s, including her friend Adolf Den. Gág was free-thinking, and she was politically and socially liberal, far ahead of her time. She predicted women's rights and feminism, sexual liberation, and the Back to Nature movement by almost 50 years. Often referring to herself as a gypsy, she dressed in comfortable, peasant-style clothing, and she deeply desired to be free to do her life's work, which was creating art. In New York, Gág was successful with commercial assignments, but that sort of work wasn't her passion. She found work painting lamps, but that work only seemed to dampen her spirit. She and Den began a short-lived romantic relationship, and it seemed somewhat disappointing to Wanda. She wrote, "Love is certainly a complicated business. Perhaps I am not qualified to judge, but it looks like one big, eternal, undependable tangle to me." Adolf Den eventually moved to Paris, and Wanda began to sour on life in New York. She must have known that for practical reasons she had to stay near the city, because she did. And during these times, she began a relationship with Adolf Den's roommate, Earl Humphreys. The two would embark on a long, interesting relationship filled with love, but not always with loyalty. Longing for a simpler, more uncomplicated life, she moved to the Connecticut countryside and rented an old farm for $45 a year, which she named Tumble Timbers. She would make trips between Connecticut and New York frequently. In 1928, after 2 successful gallery shows of her prints and drawings, a children's book editor named Ernestine Evans took notice and approached her to write and illustrate a book for juvenile readers. Gág had already been working on a book for years, but no publisher seemed interested before that. When publisher Coward McCann saw the manuscript for Millions of Cats, they didn't hesitate. And when it was published, it was an immediate success, selling 10,000 copies within months. Millions of Cats was groundbreaking. It used lyrical wordplay and vibrant horizontal imagery. In the story, an old man can't choose just one cat for his wife, so the landscape swarms with millions and millions of cats. With the money she made from her book, Millions of Cats, Wanda's ambitions for true independence were finally realized. In 1930, she bought her own 25-acre farm in rural Milford, New Jersey. The old farmhouse and outbuildings needed a lot of work, and so her and Earl, along with help from her siblings, remodeled the place and named it All Creation. She produced many books and lithographs during those early years at All Creation and enjoyed life with Earl on the farm. Her brother Harold eventually moved in and lettered all of Wanda's children's books. She managed to publish or illustrate many more books, and the income sustained her and Earl on the farm through the Depression and allowed them to pursue their passions. In 1940, Wanda published her diaries in the book Growing Pains. Her diaries and journals are an insightful and wonderfully revealing coming-of-age journey. Here's an excerpt from Wanda writing about her first kiss. "There was a faint, almost undefinable feeling, though, which was connected to the thought that this was the only first kiss I could ever give or take, and I was experiencing it for the first and last time. With my head on his rough woolen coat, I shed a few tears about it." In those later years on the farm, All Creation, Wanda often credited Earl with her contentment, and their relationship seemed to mature and flourish. In 1943, Wanda married Earl at the age of 50. But the happiness wouldn't last. In that year, Wanda began feeling tired more frequently and experiencing shortness of breath. She and Earl moved to an apartment in New York to escape the harsh winters of the farm. She had exploratory surgery later that year. The doctors gave Earl the devastating news that Wanda had lung cancer and just months to live. For whatever reason, Earl decided not to tell Wanda about her condition. Maybe he didn't want her to know, or maybe he just wanted her to be as happy as she could be in her last remaining days. As if by some miracle, though, Wanda seemed to recover and was able to resume writing and some illustrations that year. For the winter of 1946, Earl and Wanda went to Florida to escape the winter and enjoyed their time there for several months. In the springtime, they returned to all creation and Wanda began to feel worse. Earl did his best to care for her and make her as comfortable as possible. But on June 27, 1946, Wanda Hazel Gág passed away peacefully at age 53, with her husband Earl at her side. Wanda Gág left a legacy of art and an example for anyone who's ever wanted to follow their dreams. She overcame epic hardships with determination and grit that guided her entire life. She wrote more than a dozen books and created an abundance of drawings, prints, lithographs, and paintings. Through her deeply personal and introspective art, she rejected the lure of commercial work and helped define an entire era of art and illustration. Wanda Gág is regarded as a towering figure among modern artists, and her originality resonates as brightly today as it did 100 years ago. From a small town in Minnesota to the bright lights of New York, Wanda Gág was determined to follow her own path. Good morning. It's a bright sunny day here in Minnesota, and I left my house a little while ago. I've got about a 2-hour drive south to LuAnn, Minnesota to visit with a historian and learn more about Wanda Gág's childhood and check out the house she lived in and see what we can find out about Wanda. Thanks for coming along. All right, here I am in front of the Wanda Gág House. We're going to take a tour and meet all the people who help keep Wanda's legacy alive.
Hi, I'm Alexander Roth, and I'm curator of the Wanda Gág House Museum in LuAnn, Minnesota. The house itself is the work of art, so that kind of demonstrates itself. Of course, we want to show that in different ways. Next thing is we always feature a book. As you can see, the funny thing is the book for this year, and of course, Millions of Cats is always kind of on display. And then the last thing is the artwork itself. So it's those three things. First and foremost, I think Wanda Gág followed her own star. That's it. She did not allow herself to be defined by anybody else. Her artwork, her personhood, her character, any of that, not her books, anything like that. There's so many sides of Wanda Gág. People always know Wanda Gág as Millions of Cats, which of course, as you know, is the children's book that is 100 years old, and the oldest American picture book in print. That's part of that story. However, the backside of that story that people don't realize, this is a woman in a male-dominated culture, in a male-dominated profession in 1928 and blew the roof off of it. The other thing that people don't know is that Wanda Gág was an activist. She was very much into supporting people who had similar views than she did. And people always had things to say. And even if you look at her diaries, even when she was little, they were like, well, she didn't really do that. She traced that. And she was like 8. She goes, how dare they even suggest that? So I think in that way, it didn't faze her. I'm still doing research. I did not know that she had an FBI file on her. I did not understand why she would be on an FBI list in 1929. She was, and very, very much anti-fascist, and really she saw what was happening to Germany and her country and what the Nazis were doing as something separate. The Nazis were not Germany. Germany was not the Nazis. It was something that was happening to them, like a fire starting to start and to spread. And it did, she did become really well known. I don't think personally as much as she should be. I love the fact that Diego Rivera said that Wanda Gág was his favorite artist. I think there is, as you can see over here, what they call a Gág-essence that was penned by Alicia Myers at the Van Pelt at the University of Pennsylvania, and it's the Renaissance of Wanda Gág. Exactly. Most of it's all in black and white, and very different than this. Although you can definitely see it's Wanda Gág, and the movement is always there. I think it was the New York Times that said, she takes everyday objects and makes them hum with life. She shows them that. The philodendron, which you see there in the middle, that picture was the most sought after image during the biennial. And again, it wasn't part of the biennial. So we're incredibly lucky to have Wanda Gág and the whole Gág family, represented here. And for me, it's a real privilege, mostly because it just keeps opening up. Because there is, and as an artist yourself, there's this moment where you can say, okay, I can just leave that rest and I can come back to it. And when it's time, it will start to germinate and something will come. And that's the most amazing. And for me, it's been the most amazing to actually trust that process and to say, whatever is going to happen, it's going to unfold. For my own life, she has been an amazing inspiration. Yeah, really, I am so fortunate.
For adults, every year we feature one. The funny thing is the one we're featuring this year at the house, but her most famous one is Millions of Cats. This is for the teacher to show the little children the story when she reads to them.
I was thinking that.
And one of the interesting things that she did that nobody else thought of was she took an illustration on one side, went across the crack, and finished it on the other side. Nobody ever thought of it. Anton, the father, died when Wanda was 15 years old, and the youngest child was only 1. And on his deathbed, he said, Wanda must finish what Papa has started. He wanted her to be an artist.
Yes, that's right.
He did paintings at Turner Hall. And she went along with him. She wanted to be an artist like him, and he let her help him. And she said the only thing she regretted was that he could go up on the scaffolding and paint up high. She could not because she had to wear a dress. Try to memorize the children's names.
This little corner here, this little cutout.
Yep, that's the top of the window you saw in the basement steps.
That was intentional.
Yeah.
They just left it like that so there'd be light here.
So there's Wanda, Stella, Asta, Thusnelda, Daly, Howard, and Flavia. Somebody saw that machine out in the field and ran to Wanda's house and said, you've got to draw this. And she came out and drew it. She drew it.
Wow, that's amazing.
To me, it's a dragon.
It does look like a dragon.
This was Anton, the father. This was his studio. He had a photography studio downtown, but when they built the house, he moved the studio upstairs, and if people wanted their picture painted, they had to come upstairs. It took a long time to sit for a picture in those days. In fact, sometimes they had to put a metal brace behind their back to keep them still. And he advertised he had a brand new camera, and it took a few minutes to sit for. And we have advertisements there that he sent out. That is a picture that he took of his daughter, Wanda, smoking a pipe. And he etched the smoke into the negative.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Was the skylight always there?
He wanted the skylights. He wanted that put in. They leaked horribly, but our new ones are much better.
Yes.
But they let in the light that the artist wants.
This is an original work of his. Yeah, that's brilliant.
There's more of his artwork at the museum downtown.
Ah, sure. But these are great pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He read about, before he died, he went through some stages of delirium. And all he could say when he was delirious was light and shadow, light and shadow. As an artist, we know. how important it is.
But that might have had a double meaning for him at that
Could
time,
be.
I suppose.
Right? Anton's practicing for something he was going to paint in somebody's home.
Sure. That's beautiful.
Imagine being able to practice your art on your walls.
Well, when you're an artist, I guess.
Well,
that's
I
what you-
can say that I've left a few homes in the past that have windows on them. If you look down there, you'll see the holes in the floor. There's one in each floor here.
Yeah, let the heat up.
You did not have forced air heating.
No, but
So
this
the
would,
only heat that you had upstairs was what rose naturally.
and the kitchen would probably
Yeah,
stay
there's one
warm.
in the kitchen.
Yeah, yeah. So this is their closet.
This is
Right here.
it. That's the kind of costume that she loved to wear.
Oh, let me see. Yeah. Ah, sure. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Okay. I always cover this up when I have people come. Because I have to ask you, this is the parents' bedroom.
Okay.
I have to ask you a question here.
Yeah, sure.
I always
sure.
cover this up. What's wrong with this lock?
It's upside down.
Good, the artist is observant. They thought that if you put it upside down, you'd scare away the demon. The demons would be so confused they wouldn't break in.
Right. They were kind of superstitious.
But my question is, if that would work, why wouldn't you want one on all your doors? This is the backyard. You can see the steeple there. That's St. Paul's Church.
That's
St.
still
Paul's
there.
Church is
Yeah,
still there.
right.
But right now, there's a house next door and there's a house here, so the backyard
Yeah.
is much smaller than it was. Well, we're in the parents' bedroom. Can you imagine getting up in the morning and getting your cup of coffee and opening this door and going out onto your little porch?
Wow, that's pretty cool.
From when they lived here, none of those homes were there. None of those trees were there. It was all field. All the way to the hills. Those trees were planted when those houses were built.
That's unbelievable.
There is a little story about the children. Children were all out here. The hurdy-gurdy man came. The hurdy-gurdy man is playing his music, and he's got the monkey coming around. And the children are up here, and they coaxed the monkey to come up here. And he kept him captive, and they wouldn't let the monkey go until the hurdy-gurdy man played all of his music, and then they let him go. So, they were good kids, but they had a little mischief in them, too. Well, in 1918, when they had to move out of the home, they couldn't afford to live here anymore.
Right.
She and her two sisters painted this whole house, and they wore men's trousers, and it was a scandal. Those women went outside in pants, and they
Right.
painted the house.
They didn't know.
But they couldn't afford to hire painters.
Right?
That closet. It's all the way so it isn't banging.
Okay, sure.
Probably don't need the light for them. Remember when I said there were 70 panes of windows?
Yes, and everywhere there's light in the house.
You can stand right here and look through these two bars. You get a picture of the whole room.
Okay.
Windows.
Yes.
There's a nice window there.
Ah, and they just use this for storage in here.
Yes.
I'm sure the
children
kids.
have played in there, but it would be awfully warm in the sun.
Yes. Well, it's warm now.
Yeah.
And now
I
they're-
just get a kick out of all these windows.
I think he wanted to keep the place light, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's great. That's fantastic. And this,
And you, as an artist, know the value of a mirror.
right?
I-
This is his original,
I don't.
found in her New Jersey.
Yeah.
Look at the one behind her in the
Yeah.
photograph.
But for me, when I do a piece of art,
Yes.
I hold it up to a mirror.
Yes,
And
that's,
I can see if your hand naturally slants to one side, I can see it on the
you can tell, yeah.
And another skylight. He wanted that skylight.
This is a picture of him. This is just kind of a collection of their genealogy and their photographs.
With 7 kids running in and out of the house, I allow the children to slam the swing door. If you want to hear it. Is that the sound of summer?
That is the sound of summer.